Good evening. Have you ever feared the end of days and wondered how you would provide for your family if your hard-earned money couldn't even buy a slice of cheese? This terrifying outcome is why the Nuka Cola Corporation has invested millions in protecting your future. And that's why I'm here today to proudly present our new invention, the Nuka Cola Super Secret Stash. Now I know this might look like a regular collectible, but while everyone is frivolously throwing their money away, you could be storing away valuable caps with every purchase of our delicious Nuka Cola. And while it's gathering dust on your beautiful walls, you can feel safe and secure that bandits will not immediately find your labeled stash. So don't let your loved ones suffer after the inevitable doom comes. Invest in your future today and let come what may.
We are experiencing technical difficulties. Please stand by.
To bring this crazy invention to life, I had to find the best test subject. And thankfully I had this red Ibanez that I got for $80, and it's already the perfect template. But first I had to make sure that it would pass inspection.
Oh, she's gonna play herself.
Oh! That's really cool. She played one string. And once my boss approved it, I moved on to laying down the logo. I thought it'd be much easier to lay down the logo using this vinyl sticker, which came with its own set of problems, which you'll see in a bit. I freehanded the logo to make sure that it would best fit the area that I cut out, and this way I could make sure that it would fit the body the best it could, and to make it as big as possible. Once I felt it was good enough, it was time to cut. Because this time we're not painting it on, we're making a custom handmade sticker. Carefully tracing all my lines so I don't go too far and end up cutting the body. And once I was confident enough that I traced everything, I erased all my lines. But here is where it got really tricky. Since the vinyl sticker paper is made in multiple layers, I had to carefully peel it and recut the majority of my lines, and also clean up the majority of my edges without trying to damage the body, until I was happy enough that the logo looked clean enough, so I could move on to the knobs. And since they came with these ridges, I thought it'd be a fun idea to turn these into bottle caps. To using this gel nail polish set so I can make sure that we could touch them without damaging them. And since they use UV to harden, we gotta peel them before we let them cook. For the logos on the bottle cap knobs, we're gonna use this vinyl sticker paper again. And thankfully I printed enough just in case I mess it up. But thankfully we only need 4. But before we stick them on, we gotta paint the edges so it better blends into the knobs. And once they've all hardened, we can now stick them on, if you can peel them apart. It might have been easier to place these with tweezers, but I didn't want to damage them. And once all 4 are on, we can move on to the next step. Now I know they don't all match to the paint on the knobs, but that's where the next step is really going to help, while also protecting them from damage. And for some reason this gel polish doesn't require UV, which makes it a little easier. And once they're all shiny and pretty, we just gotta let them dry so we can move on to the next step, sanding and painting. Which should have been the first step, to be honest, but I didn't think about this till we were halfway through the build. Getting a clean edge on this edge is the most important thing, so I took my time following the lines before peeling the area that's going to be painted. The front side was much trickier than the outer edge, but the whole thing basically has to be covered, so we're going to go through a lot of blue tape. And thankfully this roll was the exact size of the outer edge, with the exception of some spots. So once I laid it completely around, I went in and cut the areas that were a little too thick, while trying not to damage the body again. Although it already has damage, which is partly why I wanted to do this so I could cover all this up. But before we do any sanding, we gotta cover the whole thing, which would have been easier if I removed the hardware, But why go through that when you have zero patience but lots of bags and tape? She has to be covered from head to toe, not just to protect her from the dust, but also the paint. And now that we're all done, we could take her outside, so we can strip her naked in front of our neighbors. Carefully not going past the tape, because the red part is what we're going to be painting. Each edge only took a few minutes before we were to the wood, so this step didn't take much time at all, even around the tight little curves. Then I went in with smaller grit sandpaper before she was ready to be painted. And to keep in the Coca-Cola theme, Nuka Cola, we're going with white for the edge, which will take a couple coats to get a really even edge and to cover up all the wood. So after a couple days of painting and drying, we can now do the clear coat, applying it while she rests on her back so we can get the best even coat, before hanging her by her neck so she can dry. And now we can move on to the most satisfying part, taking her clothes off. And since I know you really like this, I'm gonna let you just enjoy it. And here she is. Now the edge isn't perfect, so just with some fine grit paper, we could smooth it out and blend it in a bit, while trying not to scratch up the body. And since that step's very tedious, we could just move on to something more exciting, this bottle opener. Because being pretty isn't enough, you also have to be functional. And installing was fairly easy. Marking the screw holes and pre-drilling was basically all we had to do, just as long as we didn't go too far. And these bottle openers can be found at most hardware stores. They're mainly used for outdoor areas, but it's exactly what we needed here. Just in case I'm playing and I need a beer. And once it's sturdy in place, we can move on to the next step, the piggy bank. Although this piggy won't be holding money, but instead bottle caps. And we're gonna feed this piggy through this old espresso filter once the hole is wide enough. And to mark where we're gonna drill, we're gonna use our trusty blue tape. But it's also gonna double as a protective layer for the paint. But before drilling, we gotta outline the diameter of the entrance and mark the perfect center for drilling the hole that will guide the larger drill bits. You could just go in with the bigger boy, but this ensures that it'll go straight in. Drilling far enough so we can have the faceplate fit flush against the body. Next, we gotta drill the cavity that all the caps are gonna fall into. And since we need all the space we can get, we're gonna drill through the whole body. And thankfully she's not too thick, so we drilled through the whole thing in a matter of minutes. And now that she's wide open and everything seems to fit, we just need a quick test before gluing everything into place with this clear silicone. And since the crevice was so tight, I had to use a toothpick and slide it all in slow and steady. I thought the clear silicone would be the best, so that way you wouldn't be able to see any of the glue after it dried. And for the rest of the cavity, I already had a spare plate laying around, and all I had to do was measure everything into place. And pre-drilling again helped us guide the larger bits. Once we got the majority of the cavity open, I got my Dremel to slowly carve out the rest of it. This cavity has to be wide enough to fit at least a handful of bottle caps, but smooth enough so that way they don't just get stuck on the edges. And it also looks more aesthetically pleasing, even though no one will ever see inside of here. Well, I guess except for you. Now we could cover up the cavity, which is as easy as just marking where the screws go and pre-drilling ahead of time. While not going too far, of course. I did my best to fit the plate to the shape of the body so you wouldn't feel it while it's resting against you. And now we can work on the final touch, painting the letters for the bottle opener. Which ended up being a lot tougher than I expected, just because I didn't have a smaller marker. So I had to remove as much as I could because it started to bleed into the center, and once I dried a bit, I painted out the center as well, just to cover up as much of my mistake as I could. Then I started on the other end, carefully applying just layer by layer so I wouldn't end up bleeding it again before I had to end up going over it all over again. It still ended up bleeding a bit, so I used a toothpick to remove as much as I could, and it ended up looking fantastic, especially the further away you look at it. And there you have it, the super secret stash. I had a blast making this one, and I hope you had a blast watching me do it. And I also hope it inspired you to make something. Not everything has to be super expensive. You'd be surprised what you can make with spray paint, a drill, and nail polish. So don't let price range prevent you from making anything. And as always, thank you for watching.